Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Two Haven't Rolled podcast. My name is Oliver. On this show, Robin and I spoke with Chira. Chira crews for many LARP games, including the Empire LARP system here in the UK. She is part of the Skirmish crew at Empire, which means she gets to play the monsters and the barbarians that the players get to fight. It was a really interesting insight to see what it's like on the other side. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. If you're new here, consider subscribing. If you're listening on your favorite audio platform, consider leaving us a nice review. All these things will help us out. If you want to get in touch with us, the details are down in the description below. And with all that out of the way, let's get into our conversation with Chira. Right, we have Chira here with us. Chira, how did you get into LARP? That is my first opening question to everyone. You have on here.
So mine's a little bit of a backwards entry. So I controversially haven't actually ever played a LARP.
Nice.
So I was doing reenactment before, and I went straight into the Empire Skirmish team, and I now crew 2 other games on top of Empire as well.
What type of reenactment did you do?
Norman.
All right. Okay. So how did you was it, because I know there is a crossover between LARPers and reenactors. Was it the reenacting that got you into LARP? Was there like LARPers reenactors that were like, come and join LARP?
Yeah. So some of the guys that I do reenactment with had previously done LARP. I think some of them had actually done Maelstrom.
All right. Yeah.
And I think they got into the Empire Skirmish team, and then they were like, hey, I've started doing this really, really fun thing. Do you want to come and just hit people for fun for a whole weekend?
Yeah, because it's a little bit more it's a little bit more easier going LARP, isn't it, compared to the reenacting where it's like actual metal weapons and things like that, right?
I think the combat itself potentially, because like you say, it's foam, not metal weapons. However, obviously the weekend when we do reenactment shows, we probably do 20 minutes of fighting 2 to 3 times a day.
Yeah.
When I'm crewing over Empire, we do hours upon hours over the weekend. So I say the overall intensity is probably much higher at LARP.
Yeah, because I imagine
for us, obviously.
yeah. Well, I imagine especially if you're doing the crew side, the actual percentage of combat that you do is way higher than a player would. I mean, even I'm just thinking, like, even if you're a player that just goes, oh, all I want to do is just go on every single skirmish, you're probably still not going to do as much as the skirmish crew, right?
Yeah, so I think our usual weekend schedule changes depending on which event because of light levels and weather and etc. But we'll do block of 3 or 4 Friday evening, and then block of 3 or 4 into Friday night. Then obviously we battle Saturday morning, and then usually an afternoon, an evening, and a night slot on the Saturday, and then obviously the battle on the Sunday. So yeah, we can do quick maths. 6, 12, probably about 18 skirmishes and then 2 battles over the weekend.
A buttload.
How you must be absolutely knackered after doing all of that.
How big, like, for Empire, how big is how like rough numbers wise for personnel, like how big is the skirmish crew?
So the purely fighting section, which is the skirmish crew, there's probably, so we'd like to reach 100, but I think we average around 70, 80.
Okay. That's not as big as I thought. And that is like, is that the bulk of the crew numbers that then go out to like the monster to the battles as well, or is there more crew that join you for the big battles?
So there's kind of, the NPC department is split up into us that are the skirmish crew that do all the fighting, and then the NPC, the purely NPC side of it. I'm not 100% sure how many of them that are over there, but there are a lot less of us than the fighting side. They will do all of the sort of recurring NPC roles and anything that sort of goes out into Anvil, mostly. They do occasionally join us, and we occasionally join them, so we cross over in the middle. But generally, stuff that goes out into Anvil that's more role play, they'll do. The high combat stuff we'll do.
Oh, right.
Okay, that makes a bit more sense then.
But yeah, there are some other members of crew. So for example, I know some of the crew that staff the bar, for example, might come out and battle with us as well. But yeah, generally the elite units that go out are made up of the 70, 80 of us.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I didn't even know that. So it's two quite separate groups then. Like you call them like the NPC group and the skirmish group, which makes sense. So like if you have like, so when it comes to like plot and things like that, 'cause I'm assuming you'll get like a brief of what you're supposed to be doing. But do you get more plot than we would as players, or because there's an NPC group, do they just come in and be like, hey, this is your herald that's going with you, go fight Imperials, go? Or do you have a little bit more knowledge than that?
I think it depends what we do. So obviously the way it works is obviously there's the plot writers, and some of them will write for both sides of things. Some of them, what they're writing will be obviously geared towards combat or geared towards, I don't know how to phrase it, but the other streams of plot that aren't necessarily fully combat. So they'll work with both teams. And like I said, we do interact. So sometimes if you're coming out to rescue prisoners or something like that, that's not always, but generally tends to be a member of the NPC crew that have come out with us.
Right, okay.
But equally, we've gone out and done stuff with the NPC crew as well. It just depends on what numbers they need. Like I said, the NPC crew is much, much smaller than we are. So if they need 30 Jotun to turn up in Anvil, then they look at us and they're kind of go, please.
Could you please come and be Jotun with us?
So I know one of the things that went out this year that you might have seen was the mage tournament that happened, I believe, in the Dornish Glory Square. So that was made up of members of both teams. So there were NPC members and skirmish crew members there.
All right, okay. Oh wait, yeah, because that was the Icy Crag or something, wasn't it? Yeah. Oh, you're all right. Yeah. Because that's it. When sometimes you get like heralds and things like that, I always go, okay, well, is that skirmish crew? So that's that. So one question I had for you, like you said, oh yeah, because I'm assuming you get to play like lots of different like Jotun and you get to play everything, right? So if someone's going, right, I want to join skirmish crew, I'm interested in that type of thing. Does PD provide kit and things like that for all the different monsters and that?
Yeah, so when you join the skirmish crew, the monster tent that we work out of has loads of stuff in it that is just for skirmish crew to use, or NPCs if they're coming out with us. So when I started with a very, very basic base layer. So I had a linen under tunic and some like black leggings and stuff. That's basically all I had, and some boots. So there's sort of different coloured tunics to throw on. There's a little bit of armour. We used to have mail, but we don't anymore because no one was looking after it. So it just turned into rust.
Oh dear.
But yeah.
So I'm assuming you have
little
your
bit
own
of leather armour.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you have like your own thing that you'll start building up because, like you say, is the whole group a little bit like yourself? Is there most of the people skirmishing like full-time skirmishers at Empire, or do you get people that dip in and out?
Yeah, so the skirmish crew at its core is all, when we turn up for the whole weekend. Like I said, there's occasionally extras from other bits of crew that don't play, because I think depending what role and crew you do, for example, the gate crew, they tend to do the gate job and then go and play for the rest of the weekend, because obviously they're not being given plot. They're just standing on the gate. I say just, we appreciate everything they do, but in terms of the plot, that they're on the gate, so they're not getting involved in other bits of the game, so they can go and play as a character for the whole weekend. Obviously, as an NPC or a skirmish crew member, you're getting, like you said, you're getting fed bits of plot that you wouldn't have access to as a player. So you can obviously leave and go and play, but what they ask is for you not to sort of dip in and out. It's to pick one or the other for a significant period of time.
That's fair enough. Does it become a little bit like, hey, I know you haven't played, but you know that you obviously know the game quite well. If you're having this select amount of people constantly doing the skirmishes, I imagine, do you not get a little bit like your own little nation, like your own little group in there?
Yeah, so I think that's one thing about the skirmish team is we have as much fun as the players do, and it's important that we do. Otherwise, it would be really boring for you lot to go out and face a bunch of miserable monsters.
Yeah.
So yeah, the skirmishing for us is our game. It is our weekend. So everything that a player puts into it, we would put into it from the opposite side. So aspirational kit and improving role play and all of that, the skirmish crew are trying to do every time they turn up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, you were saying about playing different monsters, different barbarians and things. Do you have one like that you really prefer to play? Like, do you really like being Druge or being Jotun? Is there one that really stands out to you?
So I think it depends on the scenario. Generally, I would say I prefer to play Druge. And I've put a lot of effort into my mage armor. So if you've been out and caught sight of a Druge wearing very fluorescent green mage armor at any point,
okay,
that's me. Oliver's recognizing it. I can send you a picture over afterwards if you want.
Oh yeah.
Ben did manage to get really good pictures of me. So yeah, Druge are quite fun to play, but Jotun can be equally as fun. So, but they're the two I've played mainly. So I joined in 2019.
Okay.
So I've played a little bit of Grendel, but not loads because obviously the peace treaty came into effect that year.
Which I think is up soon. So.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it runs out at E4, but needs renegotiating at E2.
Yeah.
If I can remember the wiki properly.
So we'll see. We'll see. I wouldn't mind having a little because we've not actually come up against Grendel, have we, Robin? Like you said, for the reasons you just said, Chira.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah, but I would like to. Thing is, like in character, I want to just keep fighting the Druge. Out of character, I don't want to keep fighting the Druge. In character, I'm like, all the Druge must die, but it'd be cool to like mix up maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's weird because I quite like fighting the Druge. And I think it's because I've gotten to a point now where like I'm so used to fighting them that I'm just like, yeah, come on then. I've got this hatred towards them, which is like fueling my character. I don't know how I'd feel about fighting someone else, because I think in character, if Arnell was fighting someone else, she'd be like, I could be killing Druge right now. Why am I even dealing with you?
Do you ever get to play any of the like the undead and things like that, like the they wraiths and things like that? Is that?
I haven't personally, but yeah, the skirmish crew will cover like the tortured souls and things like that.
Yeah.
I have played Valorn and some other ghosties. The one I've not done is I've not done any Thule. So obviously, again, the Empire's been at peace with them for quite a long time. So
yeah,
there are members of the skirmish team that have been there since the beginning. So they'll have done almost entirely Thule at the beginning. But like I said, I joined in 2019, so
yeah,
it's mostly been Jotun and Druge.
Yeah. I mean, the Valorn are one that out of character quite terrify me, just because of stories I've heard about Valorn skirmishes being like super deadly. I'm just like, but at the same time, this is the thing with skirmishes, right? I'm interested to hear your point of view, because all the players are always like, they're so deadly, and a lot of people just won't go on them because the rumor is that they are so deadly. But you end up missing out on aspects of the game because you go, oh yeah, I don't want to skirmish because I've got shit to do and I could do with being alive to do that shit, but then you hear stories, people come back like, oh god, it was this, it was that, it was terrifying, and I'm like, oh, I kind of wish I'd gone. Are they actually as deadly? Are you guys briefed to be like, yeah, this is like, try and give them a high threat, or is it just you just do what you do and sometimes people die?
I think for us, because a lot of the crew have been playing now for a long time, and we play as these every event, they are like our characters.
Yeah.
So we can drop into the different nations. So obviously, if we get told to go out and be Druge, we can sort of switch into what we feel the Druge would act like. Equally, if we then switch over to doing Jotun stuff, it will be a different style of fighting. So I think we try really hard to give the players the flavor of what they're going out there to face.
Yeah.
So it's not the same thing all the time. It is definitely flavored to the briefs that are written for each of the individual nations.
Yeah, because I definitely appreciated that. But that I think there was a little bit of issue at E4 when we fought the Druge on the Sunday battle, because like I'd skirmished against the Druge, and like you said, the Druge brief, the monsters that I was fighting in that one we did at E2, Robin, where we were fighting the Druge, that like the Druge were acting like the skirmish crew were acting on the brief of the Druge, that they surrounded us, and then they realized they were like one-on-one with Dornish knights, and then they went, "We've got them surrounded," and then we were like, "Now what?" And they were like, "Run away!" You know, and they were so that it got in your head, oh, you know, this is what Druge do. They, you know, they like to run. Don't follow them in, but don't follow them into areas if they won't. Yeah, they'll taunt, but they won't fight you one-on-one. But then I think there was a little bit of like, it was a little bit jarring on the Sunday, because the obviously the player base who were monstering weren't as maybe as like au fait as you guys over in the skirmish crew of how Druge act. Do you ever find that if you're like monstering, that you're like, oh yeah, now the players are playing the Druge, maybe it's not how we would play it?
I think one thing is that the Druge are, what I would say is the Druge are harder to portray in a big battle, because the site's so small and the battles have got to such a large size now that it's difficult to put that kind of flavor in all the time.
Yeah.
However, the other thing I would say is, if you read the wiki about that Sunday battle at E4, you were facing a surrounded force. So as of the Winds of War, the Druge armies in that area had been completely surrounded. So sometimes there are bits of flavor, obviously, that the crew are given that the players might not necessarily have.
Yeah, you got to have it. You got to have it. You got to have it make sense, I guess. But that's what I mean. And there's not really a lot of time to brief the players either. Like we've monsters Jotun and Yagara like every single event we've done. And the brief is very like it's brief. The brief is brief, you know, and you go in there, so it's like, right, it's Jotun, you know, they're like this, they don't like this, right, go fight, you know. So it's you can't. It's a tip I give people. I think it's way more fun if you're a player and you're monstering to monster to the brief, because it's way more interesting than just going in suicidal, you know.
And I'm sad, my Yagara's died now. I got attached to her over the first few events. I was just monstering as her.
Yeah, so one thing I will say is, obviously, and this might be why people have the sort of ideas and the rumors behind it, but obviously when you go out on a skirmish, it is the skirmish team as a unit that you're facing.
Yeah.
When you come out to battle, what happens is the 70 odd of the skirmish team will be split up, and if there is an elite force on the battlefield, we'll get put into that, and then the rest of us will be split up to be unit commanders, area commanders, runners, and things like that. So we don't actually fight necessarily as a unit on a battle. So that might be one of the things that makes it feel a little bit different to battle or to skirmish, because when you skirmish, you're facing a cohesive unit. It would be similar if we took everyone in Dawn and split them into twos and sent them off with a group of random players.
Sometimes that
it
happens on
would
the battlefield, by the
change.
way, with Dawn
Yeah.
specifically. Sometimes you'll see just one Dornish person like just leading, especially on that Sunday battle when we had 7 nations. There was times where it was just like there was just like 2 or 3 Dornish people and a load of other people following them.
We've adopted these people.
Obviously,
I get what you mean, though. Yeah.
it changes how you act, because you're like, I don't know these people, I don't know how they fight.
Yeah.
Let's just make the best of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there ever any like there must be a little bit of competitiveness as well with the players? Like there must be a little bit of, oh yeah, we got them there, you know?
See, I don't know, because I've not been a unit commander in a battle, so I don't tend to lead the players in, so I tend to stick with skirmish team and other roles.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, like in the skirmishes, like because obviously, like you said, you're a cohesive unit, you know. So there must be a little bit of competitiveness when you get a load of rowdy players coming through that gate, and you're like, yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, we, as a majority, we do tend to play. So the barbarians are us playing.
Yeah.
So we can get just as invested in the barbarians as you guys do into your characters.
Especially if you've got a plan, because you want to like execute that plan, right? You go if you're being told, yeah, the Imperials are coming, but what they don't know is we have this, and this, or this Forlorn's going to pop up and it's going to surprise them. And I imagine, because it can only be like human nature, you know, or orc nature, you know, like to like be like, yeah, we have this plan, we want to like execute the plan, you know. So it's all well and good letting the Imperials be heroes, but you know, I imagine you get caught up in it, right?
I think that's the line as crew that we try and stick to, is that we want to be competitive, but we obviously also are there so that you lot have fun.
Yeah.
And you have
Yeah.
an enemy. Yeah. So it's a line that, which is why, going back to one of the earlier points, that no, we're not there just to kill all of the characters, because that wouldn't be very fun for you. But obviously, if there's an opportunity and you've made an in-character mistake, then
yeah.
the enemy is going to take advantage of that.
Oh, that's really good to hear, actually. I mean, like, we have only done 2 skirmishes so far, and the most recent one we did was terrifying. I mean, I think it's the first time that I felt real genuine fear because it was at night. It was the last skirmish. Was it the last one at E4 or the
I think there might have been one after it, or was it? No, yeah,
it was the last.
It
one.
was the
like
it was the Winter Herald of Agrement one. That was so it was on the Friday night. Yeah, that was our first night skirmish we've ever done, and I don't know how you as a crew like do those like nighttime skirmishes like one after the other, because that is exhausting and terrifying. It must be as exhausting for the skirmish crew, right?
Yeah, so I think obviously we get to know the area a little bit better, so it's probably slightly less terrifying for us because we know where things are. We've had chance to go out and see where things are positioned. Sometimes, not all the time, but generally. So yeah, it's probably not quite as terrifying, but yeah, it is interesting fighting in the dark, and E4 is usually the worst for it. So it's usually the darkest at E4.
Yeah, because it can be. I mean, like what? Did you ever have like safety concerns and things like that when you're fighting in the dark a lot in those trees? You're constantly out there.
Yeah. So what you'll usually notice is that the plot writers and the guys that organize the timings of everything are very conscious of that. So if we're doing some stuff in the woods, that will generally be the late evening slot, not the sort of night slot.
Yeah.
So that'll be sort of the 7 o'clock slot, and then your 8, 9 o'clock stuff will happen out in the open where it's likely to be lighter.
Yeah.
The only time that might be taken into consideration on any other way is if it's obviously pouring it down with rain. Yeah. They might opt to do some stuff in the copse rather than in the open. But yeah, they do take all of the light and weather considerations into how they plan the timetable.
Yeah. You mentioned weather. I don't know if the weather's really bad. They change it a lot, but if it's spitting with rain, there's one thing. There's one luxury I guess you as a skirmish crew don't get that the players get is that we can just be like, I can't be asked going on that skirmish. But I guess
It's raining.
Yeah, I guess you have to do the thing, right?
Yeah, there have been times where we've been stood in the woods or in the field or wherever, and it's pouring with rain, and we're stood there, and then the refs get the call to say no one's coming. But the thing for us is we tend to go out. The way our timetable works is we tend to go out in blocks of 3 or 4. So if we're going out for a Jotun skirmish, we're likely to be going out for 3 Jotun skirmishes in a row. So if the players call off the first one, we still have to stay there to see if they turn up for the second or the third one.
Oh, really?
Oh. Yeah, so the skirmishes usually, for the players, they're usually timetabled for about 20 minutes. And if you ever have a look into the timetable, you'll notice that they'll run back to back of the same thing, but for different plot, but it'll be the same nation, if that makes sense. So
right, okay.
You'll have one set of Jotun skirmish going somewhere, and then you'll go through the gate to do a different Jotun skirmish. But obviously, it's the same crew.
Yeah, I get you.
In the same bit of the woods.
So yeah. It's like we're just different Druze, but it's the same. Like
Yeah,
you say, it's the same
in character, that's an entirely different set of barbarians, but they're the same crew. So if the players cancel the first or the second one, we still have to wait out there to see if they turn up to the later one.
See if they turn up.
Yeah. It has happened.
So do you folks like do you have where's your like base then, like for most of the weekend where you get ready in that? Is that
so do you know as you come through the battle prep where all the armor's laid out when you come through to battle? So there's the massive marquee off to the left of that.
Okay, yep.
So that's the monster tent. So that's where all of our communal kit lives. So stuff that's owned by PD, like the weapons and the armor, that all lives in there. And then that section behind that marquee is all sort of camping. So out of character style camping, which is where we'll all stay.
And then you just hang out there, and I'm assuming you excuse me, and then I'm assuming you kind of have to I'm assuming you have to like distance yourself from the players enough, don't you? Because you can't really like.
So we do get what's called R&R characters. So after we've finished with the skirmishes for the day, which tends to be about 10:30, 11 at night, we can go out into Anvil and play as a character.
That's cool.
So obviously there's certain things we can't do. So we can't take military units or fleets or things like that. We can't do anything that'll influence the game, particularly with any of the background knowledge. But in terms of going out and going on a pub crawl or doing some sort of minor role play stuff, we can go out and do that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't even realize that, but I guess that makes sense, because otherwise you're finished all your skirmishing and then you're just like, wish I could go for a pub crawl.
That's what I thought like, oh yeah, you've done all your stuff, and then you're like, oof, and then there's like parties going on in the field over there. It would suck if you couldn't head over there.
Yeah, so we'll still have characters on the system. My character is a marcher, and we can still have businesses and manor sites and stuff like that to get money from PD. So yeah, we can still come out and do stuff in Anvil.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's really cool. Yeah, I had no idea about that, but I guess like that makes a lot of sense actually. Do you find that, because like you said, there's only, that 70 of you on the skirmish crew. Do you find that a lot of your characters, a lot of your actual game, do you spend that together as well? Do you have that sort of interaction, or is it quite separate from your skirmish crew?
I think there are definitely groups that sit together and groups that sort of split off. So I know a lot of the skirmish crew have friends that are players, so obviously they'll tend to just go out and find their friends. One thing a lot of them find is, particularly on events where the weather's bad, is they'll get there at 11 and they'll be like, yeah, they've all gone to bed because it's raining. But for us, because there's quite a lot of us from the reenactment group that go, we tend to all go out together, at least to start with, and then we might sort of splinter off as we wander through.
That's really cool, nice. one thing that I want to know about, and I've seen a lot of photographs of all these different like unique monsters and everything. Like some of them look incredible. Like I can't remember what it was called, but the one that was on the spring one last year, the huge big monster,
big bug thing, the big spring
the
herald
bug thing. So yeah, have you been able to interact much with these sort of big monsters? Have you ever gotten to be part of the crew inside any of these before?
So I've not got to be the crew for a monster as such. I've been out in the grass suit, so you probably, I don't know if you ran into the little marshlings
Yeah,
before.
marshlings.
Yes.
So I wasn't one for that battle, but I have been one previously. So I've been out in the ghillie suits, and then I've been out with, but not part of, the land sharks that the Grendel used to take out. So I have seen them on the field.
Yeah, the land shark.
Heard about these.
Yeah. I know everyone likes to talk about these land sharks. They sound terrifying.
They're big. They are. Like, as much as you talk about them, I think, particularly from obviously the player side, if you are just kind of coming on to battle, I can't imagine what it's like for you to sort of stand there and them come through, because the battle I went out with them, we had a lot of smoke machines and stuff, so it was we'd made it very misty. So obviously they were coming down the field through the fog as well. So it must have looked incredible.
Yeah. I think that they definitely need. They definitely. I know, because there's a minimal. There's minimal like filming and even photography. I know there's lots of people taking photographs, but there's actually minimal photography of like the monsters and the skirmish crew and things like that. And I think if I mean just to sell, I know Empire's doing quite well now, but like just to sell the experience, I would love to see more footage of monsters, like you say, like monsters like coming out, and the Jotun or the Druge lines just coming out with the monsters, because that is something that from our side we haven't really fought any big monsters, have we? Like we fought like that like the Winter Herald and things like that.
The Endless Stalker.
Yeah, the Endless Stalker. Yeah,
Big nails.
with the big nails.
Yeah, so I think at the moment, because it's Druge and Grendel and they're not massively well known for large creatures, they tend towards, like you said, the heralds and things like that. So
Yeah.
I think until the Grendel or the Thor come back into play, I think it's the big monsters are probably going to stay off the field.
Yeah.
Have been out. It was E4 of 2019, so the last event before COVID.
Yeah.
There are some really, really good pictures of the ice giants that went out. So I think one thing, I know you had Agent Ben Smith on a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
One thing he does really, really well is he's started trying to take more photos of the crew.
Yeah.
Which obviously we appreciate, but I think, like you said, it's good to be able to get that side of that sort of footage out there as well.
Yeah.
So the sort of the closest I've got to, it's not a monster as such, but I don't know how much of the storyline, because you'll have monstered them, but I have played Isa Winterborn.
Okay.
To see, it's one of the Jotun Yagara warband leaders that went out E3 and E4.
Okay.
So you'll have been on the field with us.
Yeah. We've done Jotun Yagara every single event.
Yeah. So this is actually her banner behind me.
Nice.
I was gonna ask about the banner, because I'm like staring at this banner, and I'm like, so what's this from?
Yeah. So well, that's really cool, because I guess if you're not going out as a unit, as a skirmish crew in the battles, that's really good, because it kind of mixes it up for you, doesn't it? Like it means that you're fighting in these small elite units usually in the skirmishes, but then in the bigger battles you're like, oh, this is where I get to like do a bit of leading or a bit of running or something like that. It kind of it changes it up for you, doesn't it, a bit?
Yeah, and there's usually slightly different stuff. So any of the elite sort of heralds, monsters, that's all usually played by Skirmish crew. So
yeah.
I think I know even I can't remember which event it was, but there was some heralds actually sent out to the players' side that you had to bring onto the battlefield. They were also Skirmish crew members.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's well, it makes sense, I guess. Makes sense. Yeah, who's Herald? Was it Jaharis's Herald or something like that?
I can't remember.
Yeah. I'm not like I rely so much on other players to feed me plot. It's unreal. Like one of the Phil, who plays one of the Dornish generals, he like did an amazing thing this morning on YouTube. He like did like a 5-minute rundown of the Winds of War, basically. Just be like, yeah, okay, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened, and that's kind of it. And I'm like, oh, thank you, because there's so much that goes on, right?
So I'd say we've got similar sort of mirror images in the Skirmish crew. So there are some of us that will go and read every single bit of Winds of War, Winds of Fortune, to know what's happening in the wider story. And then there are others that will just turn up and be like, so tell me what's happened, please.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
Bullet point why I'm here and what's happening.
But to be honest, sometimes I try. That's the thing, is it like I try quite a bit now. I'm like, I'll try and get into the plot, and I'm like, right, okay, I think I know what's going on now, and I still get like completely left behind with some conversations that people have, and they're just like, oh, this, and this, and the other, and this nation's doing that, that nation's doing that, the Jotun are doing this, and the Druids are doing that. I'm like, I don't know, just point me at the enemy. I don't.
I think that's one of the really incredible things about Empire is that there is so much plot running over each other all the time.
Yeah.
And some of it's years long. So there'll be bits, there'll be threads of plot that some players have been chasing for years.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, you're never gonna, as a player, as a character, you're never gonna know all of the plot, I think.
Yeah,
So.
you know what? I was thinking about this the other day, like the wiki, because like you go, right, I'm going to try and figure out what's going on, but it's like it's like picking up and going, right, I'm going to get into the Justice League comics or something, and you go up, you pick up an issue, and you have no idea. And it's like, oh well, to understand that, you need to have read like Young Justice, issue this to this, and to understand this reference, you're gonna have to read Aquaman, and to get this reference, that's what it feels like. It feels like you go in, you read like one thing of the Winds of War, and you're just like, okay, well, to understand this, I'm gonna have to try and figure out the history here, or who this is, or what that is. So I wouldn't like. There's a lot. I think there's a lot of us out there that feel the same. So I think the best thing to do is just that sort of information, but it's okay not to know it all. I think.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same on the crew side. So there are some crew members that have been on the crew since sort of year one that will know a lot of the background plot and what's happened. Obviously, the newer crew members will be like, well, I know what they've done in the last year, but haven't gone and obviously looked at anything prior to that.
Yeah. Yeah, that like makes sense. I mean, I think I'm a little bit envious almost of the kids having the academy, because I'm like, you're literally learning everything. And it got to a point where, because I struggle reading through the wiki, and I could probably try harder, but I have tried reading through it, and it got to, there was something about Eternals and I wasn't understanding or grasping it. And I think it was E3. I sat down with one of the kids who I knew was really into Eternals, and I was like, I need you to explain everything to me. Their explanation was perfect. I was like, right, now I understand.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You need to, you need to. It's totally fine not to know anything, and we've said that so many times. Like, you don't have to know anything. But like, I think Robin and I are like getting into the stage where we kind of, for what we're doing in the field, we kind of need to know some stuff. Like, if we go, right, I'm going for this hat, I better actually know what is going on. Otherwise, people aren't going to listen to me.
Now.
And it's exactly the same. Like I said, I keep saying it's the Skirmish team is basically a mirror of everything that happens in the field. So again, there'll be some of us that are like, right, I need to understand more of what's going on because I've been given this specific NPC role, or I'm just more interested in it. I want to be able to role play what we're doing better. And then there are others that are like, just tell me what I'm doing and point me in the right direction.
Yeah.
But just going back to a point Robin said, I have actually fought some of the academy children, and they are vicious.
Oh my gosh. I've heard like little snippets of this, but I've not actually spoken to anyone who's experienced it. So
yeah, so when the academy go out through the gate on their little trips, that is also skirmish team
So
that they're going to
adorable.
go and beat up.
So adorable.
Not all 70 of us, but a small portion of us. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's who they get to go and beat up.
Yeah.
I literally said the other day when we were speaking to someone, I was like, I feel really sorry for the barbarians when I see the kids heading out, because I'm like, oh, those poor barbarians.
It's like the perfect field trip for kids, though, isn't it? Going through a magical gate and fighting a monster. That's like, I would have loved to have done that as a kid.
Yeah.
I take it the kids. So so the kids that are leaving like the academy to come out and fight, are those kids over a certain age, or do they all get to have a go at doing that?
I don't know how it works on the actual academy side, but I have seen some pretty small children out. I think, and there are probably people out there can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there are certain age children that are allowed to go out on the battlefield with the adults sort of on their own. But when they take groups of the academy out as the academy, I think some of them can be quite young.
Yeah.
So I don't know how. I've not like toddler aged, but
No.
like, I think it's sort of 10-year-olds out there, sort of thing. So.
No,
what are they like for pulling their bows and things?
So I've not fought them a massive number of times, but I think they're pretty good, to be fair. They're some of them are even better than the adults.
I was just about to say that. I was just about to say. I bet it's because I bet there's some. That's the thing. I guess with them, because you're doing it all the time. I imagine you are up against. You definitely are up against players that it might be their first ever time using a LARP. And it's difficult for PD, I guess, because you got a massive festival LARP, and you can just buy a ticket, buy a foam weapon, and then just run through that gate and just be like, oh yeah, I'm fighting now. So I imagine you do get a few dodgy blows on you, right?
Yeah, I think we get every end of the spectrum. So we have some people that are playing up the hero fighting to the absolute max and making it look really, really cool, but only landing one blow. And then you have those that, like you said, have just rocked up, bought a ticket, and they've never fought before. But again, it's all about people learning, and provided people aren't being completely unsafe, then we try to just sort of, I don't want to say match them because that sounds really bad, but sort of a lot of us have learned to take the player's energy on. So if we can tell someone's very nervous and very new, then we'll not necessarily let them win as such, but we'll sort of match them and not just sort of completely roll over people. So
yeah, that's good.
That makes like a lot of sense hearing that, because I mean, my first experience in the battlefield, I was right at the front. We were running out, and it would have been like the people that we were facing were the ones that were already out there waiting for us. And I remember running up to this person, and they had like a shield and things, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I must have looked terrified, and I'm pretty sure they could have killed me at any point, but they were just doing this thing where they were like, okay, come on, and they were just really, really just tiny little bits. And I remember coming away feeling really positive, thinking, oh yeah, I survived, but also I'm so glad that person realized that I was brand new and just let me have a bit of fun while still feeling a bit of danger.
Yeah. So like I said, we're out there to have fun ourselves, but if you're not having fun, then we're not going to be there. So again, it's that fine line between making sure we're role playing correctly, having fun ourselves, and then making fun for players as well.
Yeah. Have you got any highlight stories from skirmishes or anything? Has there been any times where players have just done the weirdest things, or like as Imperials or something? Have they come through the gate and you're just like, what are they doing?
Yeah. So there's been some moments when before we go out for a skirmish, we'll get a small brief from the plot writer, and it'll be, okay, this is where you are, this is who you are, this is what you're doing, this is what we expect the Imperials to do, or sort of this is what we've told them their objective is. And so there's been a couple of occasions where we've been told that their players coming to meet us are going to try and do something stealthily. And then, not to call them out or anything, but then it tends to be an entire group of brass coast that turn up.
Oh, of course, yeah. Of course it is. Yeah. Leroy Jenkins. They're just running.
With the bells on.
Jingling.
With the bells on. Hear them coming a mile away.
Other than that, there have been a couple of moments where the players have come on very, very clearly underpowered for the skirmish numbers, and they'll have there's been a couple of occasions where they've sort of, a handful of people have wandered onto the field, looked up the field and gone, nah. Let's go.
I was going to ask you that after this. Actually, I was going to say, have ever any group just come on and just been like, nope, and just turned around and left?
Choose life.
Yeah, I think it tends to happen when they either come on and find something they're not expecting, or if they've deliberately come through under the numbers.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen very often, particularly now. I think over the last year, again, not being on the player side, but from what I've heard, it's actually the opposite. There's generally people queuing up and can't get in.
Yeah.
But pre-COVID, there were a number of times where the numbers that wanted to go weren't at the number that had been specified, so they thought, well, we'll go out and give it a try anyway, and then they walk out and they're like, there's 20 of us and there's clearly at least 50 of them, so I don't like this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we had I feel like that changed even in the time we've been doing, like at the start of last year. Because I remember E1 and E2, E1 especially, because it was like the first time back. But yeah, E1 and E2, there were people like coming around being like, oh, we need numbers for the skirmish. And then there was like one or two occasions where people came around to like the glory square and was like, oh, we desperately need more people,
Yeah.
And yeah, E3 and 4, there just wasn't a thing. It was the opposite. Where every time we went to a skirmish, there was like people just being turned away. To the point where you were walking up because you were going to be on the skirmish and it was already organized that you were on, and people were just like trying to tell you, they're like, oh, skirmish is full, and we're like, oh yeah, we know because we're going on it, you know.
Yeah, because I remember like that night one that we did. My character needed to go on that skirmish, so we were on this list of people who were going to be going on, and yeah, like Oliver just said, you know, we got there and then there was lots of people being turned away, lots of people saying no, it's full, and the person who was, you know, leading it was going around counting and checking on the list and everything, and even then there was just so many people crowded around just trying to get through, because I think we needed like 50 people, I think.
Yeah, what is the actual, Chira, what are the actual numbers supposed to be for the players? Is it just dependent on the skirmish, or is there an actual number that has to be?
Yeah, so it depends on what the plot writers have written. So basically what will happen is the skirmish crew that turns up, the sort of 70, 80 of us, sometimes we'll get split, a small group will get split off, so 15 to 20 might get split off, and they'll actually run to different skirmishes at the same time. So that's why you might see the numbers change. So sometimes you'll be asked for 100 and sometimes you'll only be asked for 60.
Yeah.
And that's usually because there are less of us available at that time.
Yeah.
So
it's
I
a
think
balance thing, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not something that we as skirmish crew get any say in. So the plot writers and the skirmish crew leaders will sort of sort all of that out in advance.
Yeah.
It might change at the event. For example, if suddenly 20 of the skirmish crew can't come because they've got COVID or whatever other emergency, then obviously the numbers will get adjusted on the opposite side. But yeah, generally we don't have any sort of factor in that. That's all sorted out behind the scenes.
Yeah. So that's a good point to raise then. So what is the what's the state of the skirmish crew as in like for your numbers and the need for skirmish crew? Is there, so if people were like interested in doing skirmish crew, is there a need for skirmish crew, or do you get more than enough, or?
So I believe at the moment that you can apply. Again, I'll have to find the exact number, but it's basically Andy Connell's PD account.
Yeah.
You can apply through that. Basically, the way it works is they will keep, I don't know the exact numbers, but for example, they'll keep 150 on the books, expecting 80 of them to turn up.
Okay.
So the skirmish crew, as far as I'm aware, can take up to 100 at an event. I think we got closest at the last event. We had 90-ish of us there.
Okay.
And then obviously PD are assessing as the player base grows. They will eventually have to grow the skirmish crew. But it's all about balancing size of the site, size of the crew area, costs, because obviously they are feeding us for the weekend as well.
Yeah.
So it's balancing all that to make sure that what we can do is appropriate for what the player base needs, but they can also obviously afford to do it and how to do it.
Yeah, because that's a when you're saying like 80 to 150, that's a tiny fraction of the player base, which is like people are saying like 2,500, 3,000 people on like players, and it's like that's a very small fraction, and you've got to keep. I know obviously not everyone goes and skirmishes, but you're there literally for those thousands of players, and there's not many of you.
Yeah, again, I can't speak for what Matt has in store, but very small things at once. So they'll take a portion of the skirmish crew and run large, high combat scenarios goes out, and then there'll be smaller groups that go off to do smaller skirmishes or even plot-based stuff as well. So at the moment they have spaces that they can run, particularly if we get put into an encounter tent to do anything. They have spaces where they can run 2, sometimes even 3 things out at once. Obviously, PD are looking for their own site. Comes down to obviously the availability of crew and space and money.
Terrifying. What is with the teeth? Oh, come on. Is that an animal's is that part of an animal's skull around your mouth?
It is the depiction of, it's actually a latex mask. So in that picture I'm wearing a latex mask with a latex mask on top. And the headpiece, which is foam.
Oh man! So we just had a break, but that's an interesting topic to talk about. Actually, is it's. Do you ever like get like really overheated, like constantly changing in and out of monster kit all the time? Because I know the Imperial Orcs have a hard time.
Yeah, so we, like I said, we tend to do blocks of 3 or 4 back-to-back skirmishes, so we'll be out for like an hour and a half at a time. Then we tend to come back and have a little bit of a break. So most of us will strip off down to base layers for the interim and then put kit back on. Especially if we're going out, obviously it's different barbarian nations for each block. But yeah, I think the Jotun, in terms of kit, the Jotun are definitely one of the warmer, because obviously we like to put a lot of the furs on and stuff like that. So it can get quite warm.
Yeah, because do you guys feel like you're like a little bit of the kit standard as well, as in like from a brief perspective? Because obviously you are like embodying the Jotun, that's the experience of the Jotun people are going to have,
Yeah, so we have pretty much the same aspirational kit sort of standards as players. So when you first turn up, the kit in the monster tent is things like coloured tunics to throw on top of your base layers, and very basic kit that's appropriate. And then there are a lot of the skirmish team that then add on to that on top.
Yeah.
So I've just sent some pictures over to Robin of my Druge Mage armor.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I'm literally looking at it right now. The detail, like I keep looking, I'm like seeing more detail on it and everything. It looks absolutely incredible. And you were obviously just saying there just during the break about the latex sort of animal mask and things that you've got on there. That is amazing. Like what was the thought behind this kit, behind when it came to adding these things on? What was inspiring that?
So I've read most of the briefs that are on the wiki, so the look and feel briefs and the background briefs for the nations, and it's just playing around with what you're given on there. So similar to how you probably did with your characters, you read the brief, went, okay, well we can add this in and this in, and this will look really cool with that theme. We do exactly the same. So that's a Druge Vakari mage. So one of the things they like is a lot of their magic. They like runes and bone magic and things like that. And I think the Druge will just like to look like it. So I was very much playing off of that.
Yeah.
How can I make this even more terrifying?
Yeah, the runes just look brilliant on her and everything. Yeah. I've literally just moved my eyes over to your staff there as well.
Staff is actually one of the PDFs they have. Like I said, they have a bulk of weapons that they lend out to the skirmish crew for us to take out with us, because obviously different briefs will have different loadouts, and they can't expect people to have 27 different weapons, so they'll have piles of axes, mage staffs, things like that, so that a lot of us have some of our own weapons, but obviously not for everything. And if they want to put these units on the field very much to the brief that they've come up with, then they provide stuff towards that brief as well.
Yeah, I mean, I assume at this point you have probably had experience with quite a lot of different weapons. Do you have sort of go-tos as your different barbarian characters? You have favorite weapons?
Yeah, so my go-to up until this year was always ambidextrous with 2 axes.
Yeah.
Pretty much always took ambi. I'm not a fan of LARP, to say. So having done reenactment and used a strapped wooden shield, I just can't get on with punch grips. And a lot of the shields we use for the briefs that we play would be difficult to do anything but a punch grip with. Okay. So I tend to go ambi, and then I've done a lot with the mage this year, so I've used the mage staff quite a lot. That's the 2-handed mage staff.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, no, I fight ambi as well. I like ambi. It's the best. But I've not tried. Like I've seen different barbarians with like the 2 axes and things. I'm like, that's terrifying. I want to try some new ambi combinations. I think I want to try a flail and a sword next year as a monster, because I think it's going to be so much fun.
I think sword in one hand and axe in the other is quite a common combination.
Yeah.
Like I said, I tend to do 2 axes, but I've seen all sorts of loadouts, 2 swords, all sorts.
Yeah, it's funny what you're saying with the punch grip. So the shield that I made had a punch grip, literally because like I don't have any like reenactment experience or anything like that. So I came in and I literally just like asked, like, I want to do sword and shield, and people just like recommended punch grip, literally because they're like, oh yeah, because you can cover people next to you, and you can do this, you can move it around, you can kind of drop it and things like that. But after fighting for a year with the punch grip, I'm now like, I think I want to make one that straps to my arm that's more of a heater shield that's not like huge, because that thing is like, it's almost cheating, this thing, right? So and that's why I made it those specifications, but the way I found that I'm fighting, I'm not like in a shield wall a lot, I'm like running around a lot, which isn't great having this punch, because it's like it's like carrying like an umbrella that's like fully open sometimes. You're running around with it and it's just like in the way and it's like catching the wind and people like walk by you and like ping, like they ping off it, you know, and you're like, ah.
Yeah.
So I can see what you mean, but it's I don't know
Yeah,
whether they've gone. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I definitely think if you're looking at making a shield, to look up the way they are strapped historically. 'Cause I think it'll definitely be more comfortable.
Yeah, because some of the ones I've seen made, even the like the I don't even know what they're almost strapped, aren't they? So it's like you put your arm through and they strap, but it's like it's straight across. Whereas like if you look at the way a lot of shields was strapped on from Real, you'll be able to tell me this. They're like at an angle, aren't they? They're like up, so it like sits diagonally across your arm.
So I've got a shield that's similar to yours, but that's strapped straight across, and I don't like that either. It's better than a punch grip, but it's not. Yeah,
because the strap across, you have to do this to have it in front of you, you know. Whereas I think if it's on I think maybe it's because it's just easier to make that out of foam, because if it's straight across, then you've actually got brace, because that's the ideal thing about the punch grip and these is like you brace the foam with it, so because you make a little archway so the foam doesn't do this. But I guess if you've got it at an angle, it's more difficult. I'll figure out. I'll try and figure out how to do it.
But then I think the barbarian nations that we play, they tend to have round shields, which is even harder to put the arm strap onto, particularly for some of the sizes of the smaller round shields. So
yeah. I mean, it totally sounds like I know that you said, oh yeah, like PD, you have to they do need to give you some stuff because they can't expect you to like have all of this kit. But it does very much sound like being part of Skirmish Crew is like playing its own special little game, because when it comes to like crew for other LARP systems, and even when people have talked about crewing for like Empire, coming into LARP, people go, oh yeah, crew, and there's this thought of like, oh yeah, people crew if they don't, you know, if they like can't afford to play the game, so they go, oh, crew. But it doesn't sound like that at all. It sounds like it's its own thing where you get to have several characters, you know, in each barbarian nation. It sounds awesome.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that gets quite difficult, because obviously as a player, ideally you're going to have one character and you're going to put a lot of your time and effort into the kit for that character, or any accidents on the field. But as crew, whilst we're getting our kit together, I've got probably 4 specific kits now for different things. So it allows you to get a little bit more creative in terms of, I want to try all these different things and I want to make all these different things. But it's not, again, it's one of those things, it's not a requirement to do, but a lot of people find themselves doing it because it's fun and they want to make it look really cool.
Yeah, so it's very much it's very much its own little game, you know. even though you are crewing, it's not as if it's like, oh yeah, well, we can't afford to play the game, so we'll just have to like come along and help out. It sounds very much like you are definitely LARPing, you know, you're definitely going in there and doing it.
Yeah, I think, like I said, when I first turned up, I turned up with an under tunic in very normal color, like a very neutral color, some our character style base layers like leggings and long sleeve t-shirts and a pair of boots and then your tent kit. So it's one of those things that I went in at very, very entry level, and then when I decided it was definitely for me, then I started obviously getting the kit together. So it's very similar to a brand new player coming in with sort of basic kit that they can theme towards their nation and then building on top of it. And there are some members of the skirmish team that don't build on their kit, and that's totally fine as well, because like I said, P do provide kit for us to wear.
Yeah, exactly.
I say that the proportion of us that at least add things on top as accessories is definitely probably higher than those don't. So
yeah, it's like almost the whole obviously when you go to the wiki and you go to like the website and it's character creation, it's like, you know, you have to play an Imperial, and then it's like almost well, actually you could be part of the Skirmish Crew and you could play any of the barbarians and have your very own Druge character, which even though I hate the Druge, but part of me just now is like, I'd like my own Druge character because that'd be fun. I mean, I got really attached to my Yagara character, Perosi. She died.
Yeah, you forgot she died as well because you
I
survived.
forgot she died.
Because you've never died before, and
I
then
had never died.
yeah, and then E4, you're like, oh, cool, I get to play Rosie. I'm like, I thought you died last time. Oh, I did.
Oh,
I'm like, yeah.
Oh no, Rosie died.
She's gone.
Yeah, I think obviously the only thing that's a little bit different for us is we get told what we're doing and when. So we'll be right. You're doing now, or you're doing now. So we can't pick and choose what we feel like doing. We have to do what's timetabled for us to do.
Yeah.
And obviously there are things we can lean towards, especially with the way the barbarian nations are set up. Each of the barbarian nations are very different in terms of their flavor between each other. But then inside each nation, there are obviously the different units, which again have their own little flavors as well. So if we're going to be Jotun, we can usually choose between the different units of Jotun that we want to be.
Oh, that's cool.
So we'll usually get told, right, you're going to take this unit and this unit out. So you get at least a little bit of a choice. Obviously not if we're playing Forlorn, because Forlorn are just Forlorn. Yeah, generally with the Orc barbarians, there's that little bit of flavor you can still play with within the nation itself.
Yeah. Oh, there's something I'm wondering. Okay, I don't know if this is cheeky to ask or not, but when you are obviously being part of the skirmish crew, I assume you have fought against pretty much all the other nations, and you have had interactions with all the nations. Do you have any nations that you really enjoy fighting against or really dread fighting against, if that makes sense?
There is a right and wrong answer here on this podcast, by the way. I'm kidding.
So one thing I'll say is the Imperial Orcs are incredible.
Yeah.
So they're really, really good fighters. And on top of that, especially if we're out as an Orc nation, it can get really confusing. So if you're just, they don't tend to come out on their own because they're quite small anyway. But yeah, if you're just fighting the Imperial Orcs, it can get a little bit like, hang on, there's an Orc there. That's not one of ours.
Yeah.
But they're incredible. Their kit standards are amazing. Like, I really enjoy their roleplay, their kit, everything. Other than that, again, it depends who you're playing as. Which barbarians we are. So if we're playing as Druge, then it's really quite fun to meet the Brascos or Navarre because they have the similar skirmishy fighting styles.
Yeah.
If you're going out as Jotun, then I quite enjoy running into Wintermark because obviously there's a lot of in-game roleplay history between those two nations as well.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is you can always tell where Dawn are when they come out.
Yep. There's no missing us.
So there's been some occasions, particularly on the larger battles, where I've been in the woods and Dawn have been on the field, and I'm like, oh, I can hear them. Well, I can't see them, but I can hear them.
Yeah, we do make a. Thing is, there's a lot of us as well, so and we do move in a big like fast herd as well, you know.
We made this joke before where we're like, obviously there's not a cavalry because there's no horses or anything in the system. I think it was Oliver that made the joke that Dawn are actually the cavalry at this point. It just got lots of heavy stuff on it. We just run and can't stop.
It's a bit like that. See, like obviously, like you get the kind of the nations that move in like their units, you know, like Wintermark and things like that. They're good. Their shield blocks and things like that. Dawn are a little bit, you know, that scene in Jurassic Park where the Gallimimus and they're just like, it's just like you hear the thundering, it's like, and everyone just runs and it's just it's just chaos. There doesn't seem to be any order. It's just like, what's happening? and then they just go by you. So if you just stay there as a monster, you'll probably be fine. Just be like, yeah, I'm down. So
That's what I'm gonna think now when we're out running.
I've never playing as my character in my nation. I've never once got back tread to execute anything. Like just got if they're down, I just assume they're gone and just keep going. So so with the obviously you said that your friends through reenactment brought you into the skirmish crew at Empire, and you said, oh yeah, that's once you get to the stage where it's like, yeah, it's for me. Have you never ever kind of thought, oh, I might like to be a player, or I might
So I was supposed to go and join a different system as a player,
Mhm,
because I quite enjoyed the theme and the background of that event, and I
mhm,
had friends that played it,
mhm.
and then I ended up crewing it.
You ended up crewing it. What system's
Yeah,
that?
because that's the Beyond Ragnarok system.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
run
yeah,
by
yeah.
Meta Games.
Mhm,
So yeah, I was supposed to play that one as a
mhm.
player. I ended up crewing that one because they
Yeah.
were short on crew.
Sure, crew. I guess it's one of these things when you've done it before and people know that you've done it before, then you just end up being like people just ask you to do it, or you're just like, oh yeah, I can jump in and crew that. Because for me, I'd be like crewing something now that I'm comfortable being a player. I'm like I'd feel maybe a little bit lost going in and crewing because I don't really
Yeah.
know what to do. But I suppose you got to just jump in and try it.
But I think, like I said at the start, I'm probably one of the sort of odd ones. So most people come into crewing having played for a number of years first and got to the point where they've completed a character arc, or they're just maybe starting to get a little bit bored and want to try something different. So that's where a lot of crew will come over, particularly into things like skirmish crew. They'll come over having played. So I know other members of skirmish crew that played for a while and then went, I really like this fighting thing. Can I do that all event?
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, you can, funnily enough.
Yeah, because I mean, it does. It sounds like to me, it sounds like if you're into the fighting part of it, that's an option for Empire. Because sometimes people go, oh yeah, Empire, yeah, it's like it's a lot. You know, it's very all the PvPs are all political, and it's very like it's not like super combat heavy. But you know, if you do the right things, it can be just completely combat heavy. It can be all combat all the time.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I believe it's Andy Connell's email address to write to if you wish
Yeah.
to apply.
Interesting.
I think last time I heard they want you to sign up for a minimum of a year.
Oh, okay.
So that you're not dropping in and out of playing and crewing.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess that could be like, yeah, I can see that not working actually. If you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna crew that, I'm gonna monster this one, I'm gonna play this one, and I'm gonna monster this one.
Yeah.
And like you said,
I think because we have access to a lot of some of the backgrounds to some of the plots, and also the bit I said about numbers. So they'll have, say, 150 on the books. If we were dropping in and out of playing and crewing, you don't know how many of those you can count on every event, which makes it very difficult for them to plan skirmishes in advance. So yeah, generally, if you sign up, you're signing up to do a good chunk of time.
Yeah. So the Ragnarok game you crew at, do you do it? How big is that LARP?
So that's compared to Empire, a much smaller system. So I think there are, I believe there's over 100, but not particularly bigger than that.
So do your responsibilities like encompass more than just like being a monster then for that one?
No, so I'm part of the monster crew for that one as well. Because it's a smaller system, obviously the crew is smaller as well. So there are, earlier when I was talking about the NPC crew and the skirmish crew at Empire are two coexisting groups that are separate. At Ragnarok, those groups are much more intertwined.
All right, yeah.
So it's kind of one team that some of them will do more NPC stuff, some of them will do more combat stuff, but they're generally one big team there.
Yeah. What's the combat like for the monsters in that system then? What do you have like a? Because that's the thing. Hearing about, because we've only done Empire, so hearing about a lot of other LARPs, it seems that Empire is quite unique in its way of doing like, oh yeah, we're in this safe zone, and then
so
we go out to the danger.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say is Ragnarok is much more like a lot of the other systems you'll have heard of. So whilst time in is it on, it is a live environment. So the monsters can get dropped sort of in the middle of the campsite, the in-character campsite and things like that. So it is, all environments are live at all times, in and out of camp.
Yeah.
So it's it's a little bit different to Empire, but it's a nice change.
Yeah, nice change of pace. That's obviously it's Viking themed. Is it like fantasy Viking or?
Yeah, it's sort of very heavily plays on the Norse mythology, particularly surrounding the mythology around Ragnarok and things like that. So yeah, it's still, I would still put it in the fantasy category. But also, if people like history, it does draw very much on the historical background and the myths and legends.
That's really cool. I don't know much at all about the history there or anything. So if you are monstering at that event, what is it exactly you are? What are you monstering as?
So there's a couple of different things. That one tends to be the other nice change of pace is we tend to go out as humans, so we don't generally have to wear masks over at Ragnarok. But yeah, it just draws on sort of aspects of mythology. So some of the things that go out are big fairy beasts, but a lot of it is sort of human enemies. But yeah, I went into that one also not knowing pretty much any Norse mythology, so I just got chucked in the deep end, and they were like, "Yeah, it'll be fine."
You've crewed one event, you can crew this event. On you go. Just attack people.
And the only other LARP that I've done, I crew for the horror game that you want to come and play as well.
So for listeners, we went to LARPCon and we saw Chira at the booth for this game. What's the game called?
Shattered Earth.
Okay, so we and Chira gave us this pitch for this horror game. I'm not massively into the horror genre, but Robin was just like almost salivating at the thought. Well, I'm not going to break it. Chira, why don't you tell us a little bit about what the premise of the game is?
So it's a post-apocalyptic LARP set in the future. So it's very much playing on the dystopian themes. The horror side of it is playing very much on suspense and tension. There are monsters, otherwise we wouldn't have a monster crew. But we're not playing on real life phobias, so it's not clowns and spiders and things like that. It's about the setting and the atmosphere. So the game runs at the moment once a year. So we ran the first event last November. It's a very, very small system. So I believe it's like 35, 40 players and approximately 10 crew. And the reason being, because we run in November, it's all run indoors at a scout hut. So the players eat and sleep indoors in like bunkhouses, and then there's the woods that go out into as well. So they're looking at running a parallel game to run in the same world, in the same setting, because Shattered Earth, the tickets for E2 went live and had sold out within 24 hours.
These smaller LARPs now, I think, because like you say, like the bigger systems are growing, and there's lots of people like us that have joined LARP going to these bigger systems, and then like, oh, I want to try small LARPs, and now small LARPs is starting to overflow with players?
Yeah, so one of the things I'll say is we had players come to that event, bearing in mind it's a horror setting, that had never LARPed before. And they came straight in to horror LARP. And the other thing that's a bit different about that is it's 24-hour time in. So we go time in, we we time in at 7 o'clock. I think it's 7 o'clock on the Friday night, and the time out at 3 o'clock in the morning on the Sunday.
Yeah.
The whole time in between that is all in character.
That's crazy. I've just...
So you could be like sorry Oliver, I'm just like, so you could be like like going to your bunk, and then you could hear a noise and be like, what is that? We need to go see what it is. Like, is that something coming in here?
Yeah, and again, that's all live environment, so yeah, there are things going on all the time.
Yeah.
If you want to see some more of it, I know you had Agent Ben Smith on talking about photography. He actually was one of the photographers for that event.
Yeah.
So he's been there.
We'll have to hit up Ben and see what, because Ben goes to everything. So we'll have to
opening that album after this.
Yeah. I would worry that I would like sleep at the wrong time and then miss a load of stuff. But I imagine most people, for a 24-hour LARP, imagine most people don't really sleep during time in. I imagine people are just like plan their sleep around it and be like, okay.
So that is the theory of the timeout at 3 a.m. in the morning, so that people can sleep and decompress before having to drive home.
Yeah, because otherwise
Oliver, you're not going to sleep.
No, but you know what I mean. I'm just like, I have if I imagine as soon as you're like, oh yeah, I feel like a nap. You're not going to want to miss anything. You're going to get FOMO to hell, aren't you? You're just going to be like, I'm just going to go sleep over here. And usually, because I've done this at Empire, the biggest mistake you can make is go, I'm just going to go have a lie down or a nap, because then you end up just like sleeping until like morning. And then you go, oh, I missed everything that happened. And everyone's like, oh my God, that was Rafe's in the camp last night. I'm like, all right, okay, awesome. I was asleep.
So that's the one thing for me for Empire is that although I really, really enjoy crewing, some of the stuff that I hear players talk about of what happened in Anvil, I get a little bit jealous. I'm like, oh, I wish I could have like been there and seen that.
Yeah.
Because obviously most of our game happens out on the battlefield and stuff, so we don't get to see anything in Anvil until 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And although there's still stuff going on, it's not the big sort of headline events.
Yeah, I mean that is the thing, because Empire is very just like role play heavy, but yeah, but very non-combat role play, political, religious, and dotting about and drinking, and the interactions are where most of the like role play interactions are where most of the game is at Empire. Because you can play Empire and get like a ton of game without doing a lick of combat whatsoever. So I get that point of view. Mind you, like Empire, in fact, actually, like you were saying, that people came to a horror LARP for their first time. Fantasy apparently isn't for everyone. So like some people just go, oh yeah, I like the idea, but a lot of LARPs are obviously fantasy based, or like medieval classic fantasy. A lot of people aren't interested in fantasy, so I guess a lot of people go, I want to try LARP, I don't like fantasy. It didn't surprise me actually that they would go, oh, I'm going to try this horror one because I love horror.
Yeah, and like some people have said before, it's like just being dropped into a video game sometimes. So I guess it's the same thing there. It's just a different genre of video game that you've been picked up and dropped into.
Yeah. But still, it's like it's quite a tense situation to go do your first role play. I mean, some people thrive.
Well, I think you're gonna find out what it's like, because I think Robin's already sold on the idea.
Yeah, like I'll be going if anyone wants to come with me, because
I'll do it. I'm not like
We'll get to 3 a.m. We'll be like, okay, it's time out. We're going to go to bed. Hey, you'll be nudging me every 2 minutes. Robin, did you hear that? No, it's fine. It's gone. Monsters are gone. No, I think it's back.
Well, Chira was showing us this real, like, you were showing us this real cool, like, these cool little puzzles and things like that you can do at the game, right? With like you can take samples and things like that, and actually look at them under the microscope and do little like puzzle type things. I thought that was really cool, but it did like remind me a little bit of like an escape room thing, and Robin's like obsessed with escape rooms, and I just won't do them. So I think that's why.
So you can go and do one for like 3 days instead.
It very much, that's what I mean. I was like, oh, it sounds like it's just the frustration of an escape room.
With a monster.
With a monster to come and get you. Mind you, I think. Go on, sorry, Chira.
I think it's, although it's on a much, much smaller scale, it's similar to Empire in some ways that there are obviously bits of the game that you can just ignore if that's not interested to you. So if you don't want to play the little puzzles, you don't have to play them. You can just be the one that stands at the front with an axe.
Yeah.
Be for the next thing to turn up at the door.
Yeah. So
like when you were sorry when you were like selling us on it, I was like, oh, you could like play. This is just sort of what I've kind of taken while I've been thinking about it since you've told us about it. I'm like, you could play a scientist in a way, and you can just be the one who is decoding these and looking at it and giving this advice to the ones that are off out to fight and things like that. And I'm like, that's just, I can have my own lab, but in LARP.
I'll just be the paranoid guy from Aliens, just like, they're in the freaking walls, man. They're all around us, man. I'll play that guy.
One thing I was wondering, actually, because you mentioned about the fact that there's a lot of things going on at Anvil that you end up missing out on. I know there's different things that happen in Anvil that, for example, at E1, we've got things like the Reaper in the League and things like that. Do the Skirmish crew are they involved in portraying any of those sort of figures that come into Anvil and interact in that sort of way?
So it's entirely down to whether it's player ran or PD plot ran. Okay. So as far as I'm aware, the Reaper is now player ran. But if there are any plots that go out that are ran by PD plot, then we can go into those. So at E4 last year, I was actually one of Matilda Fisher's bodyguard. Matilda Fisher came into the Senate, and I was part of the bodyguard that came with her. So,
you got to see that drama then.
I didn't get to see it. I could be in it. So we didn't actually get. The bodyguards weren't allowed inside the Senate. So Matilda Fisher and a single bodyguard, both of which were NPC crew, got to go and do the stuff in the Senate, because obviously that was a lot of talking and remembering the plot.
Yeah.
The bodyguard unit stood outside the Senate. So I think there were about 6 to 10 of us.
Yeah.
And you had to stand outside the Senate and be shouted at by very, very angry marchers.
They shout when they're not angry as well, though, to be fair.
Yeah.
They just like shouting stuff.
But I think from what I've heard and what I've seen, it was pretty much the entirety of the marching camp had come down.
Yeah.
So it was brilliant.
Yeah, they were riled up. They were
angry.
Yeah. So the one thing that baffles me a little bit, maybe not baffles me, but like interests me now that I'm used to like Empire and I hear about other systems that they have like different rules for the combat, like especially ones that don't have like hit points and that. So the other games that you crew for, what's the combat like in those ones? Is it similar to Empire or is it completely different?
So Ragnarok is more like, again, some of the other systems that you might have heard of. So Ragnarok works on a location-based hit system. So different locations will have different amounts of hits, and the armor you're wearing on a particular location will affect just that location's hits.
Yeah.
And then I think they've got calls that go through armor but not take hits off, and then calls that take hits off both the armor and I don't have to worry as much about it because generally the monsters are going out with global hits. So
Yeah.
not always, but yeah, most of the
Yeah.
monsters go out with global hits, so it's easier for us to count.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the one thing that I will say about, I mean, the global hit is straightforward. By God, mate,
Yeah.
having like wearing armor. I mean, that's one thing I do like about the shield, right? Because the shield, unlike a big pauldron, a shield can take hits. Whereas, like, I've just ordered myself some fancy pauldrons because Dornish, right? And I'm like, I look to them and I'm like, you know, it really sucks that like this bit that protrudes here. If someone like taps that with a sword, that's a global hit down. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that totally sucks. But I'm still gonna wear it because it looks cool.
Of course you are. Yeah, so I think one of the things I particularly enjoy is making all the different armors and kit. So
you make your own kit.
Yeah, and I'd say probably 80% of the kit I've got I made.
Oh,
so
really?
the pictures that Robin's got, I made that mage armor.
It's nice. Like, it is nice. It is green.
When I said luminous green.
You weren't lying.
So you probably didn't catch sight of it, but for E4, when we knew we were going to be taking Druid out in the dark, there are actually bits of that armor that glow in the dark. They've got glow in the dark paint on them.
What?
So the runes have got glow in the dark paint over the top of them.
Oh, that's badass.
All I remember about the Druge in that night skirmish was the green from because when we came out, there was like green lights protruding through the smoke. And honestly, when I do have nightmares about it, it's just the green coming through. And then I still don't know how we survived that. I mean, it was an experience, and we've done it now. And I don't see myself going on a night skirmish again, but you know.
So I think this is one of the things that comes back to what was being said earlier about our skirmishes actually as deadly as people say. And I think some of it comes down to what time of day and and who you're going to face. Obviously, if you're going out at night in the dark to face the Druge, then that's probably more deadly than going out in the middle of the day to face them.
So we probably wouldn't have gone anywhere near that, but because Robin had to go face this Winter Herald for her test of metal, and it was like, oh, this opportunity's come up, and we're like, okay, and we like asked a few people, we're like, oh yeah, there's this skirmish, we're going on it, and they're like, all right, okay, what is it like? And they go and have a look, and they're like, well, it's at night against the Druge, and Agrement's involved, and there's a herald. No. This sounds like suicide. We're like, well, we're going, apparently. So
I know, it's when I was like going around being like, I'm going, is anyone coming? And then I saw looks in people's eyes just being like, I'm gonna have to go now, aren't we?
yeah, luckily we made enough friends, and I think there was a few other people that were like, they really wanted to go, and so we got a decent force, because that's another thing I will say about you know, because obviously you guys in the skirmish crew are like, you know each other, and you are a little bit more of a cohesive unit. And we're talking about numbers as well. Like we because what PD do now, I think they did it before, but they like assign skirmishes to certain players, you know, so they don't have to go on them, but it gives you a little bit more organization of who's going. It's just like, okay, well, the Night Protector of Winter has to do it. That's why we went on the thing. It's like, Night Protector of Winter, that's your responsibility to organize this skirmish. However, yeah, we did have like, I think we had like a few, I think like 10 or 11 like randoms like run through the gate. So that instantly causes quite a bit of chaos, because we were like, right, okay, we got this plan, and then we had 10 players that just didn't know the plan. They're like, they didn't, I don't think they even heard of what plan was at all. And they just went running off, did their own thing, and because it was at night, and it was, there was a lot of confusion, because that's the thing, that on that skirmish, I suppose, because you guys don't really get the full effect, because I guess the whole thing is like faced at us. Yeah. So where you guys were, was where all the light was. Whereas from our point of view, you were just all like silhouettes. you know. So that was the creepy thing. So the light, we were walking towards the light, but then we had players that were like running forward and then running back to us, and we had no idea whether they were Imperials or not. It was so confusing.
So yeah, I think that's we get similar effects where when, like I said, when we're out as orcs and Imperial orcs are there, so that we can find that quite confusing. But one thing I think it's been more difficult this year because we've taken the Yagara out a lot. The battles with the Yagara can get very confusing because it's like it's just humans everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to know which ones are on which side.
And
so one thing adding on to the thing you're saying about those night skirmishes is one of my good friends that's actually in my reenactment group was the plot writer for those sets of skirmishes with the night creature. So, so he found it really, he really enjoyed hearing all the stories come out afterwards. Because he's like, I wrote that.
Yeah. Oh, that's the thing. Even though we're like, screw that, not doing that again. The stories that we got from that, because really, like in character, it was like a terrible time. Like it was just like, oh, that was so stressful, but in the best way possible. Like it was scary going to it. Like it went badly for us. It was just this epic moment of like we thought we were gonna die. Robin's character was like running in danger, fought a big monster, and I'm like, right, okay, we need to get the hell out of here. It's our first time ever doing a night skirmish, and I'm just
like sitting there, I just thought it was all Imperials around us. It wasn't. It was you guys all around us.
And we were just like, I remember just running up, I was like, right, Aaron, we need to go now, run. And I remember,
big monster.
Well, I think is I hadn't been hit yet at that point, and I was just like, we need to bail because the Imperials are halfway up the field, so we just need to just run and just hope we can outrun the Druge at this point. And I felt a couple of spears in my back, and I'm like, if I hear cleave, we're done for. We're done for. But luckily we made it back, and then obviously we were like possessed after that. So then the trauma didn't stop, after that. So it was traumatic. But at the same time, the stories that we've been able to tell after the fact have just been, it was just like a highlight. There was so many highlights just from going on that skirmish,
Yeah, so again, that's what some of us like to hear as well, is stories from what happens after.
Yeah.
So some of those effects that come back with you into Anvil, we again don't get to see or hear about those necessarily. So hearing about it after the event of what actually happened and some of the chaos that ensued, it's really nice to hear as well.
That's right, yeah, because that's the thing. I suppose we just like leave you guys behind, don't we? We jump through the Stargate and just like leave you all there, and you're just like, I wonder if they're going to die slowly of their wounds or not. That's one. Sorry, go on.
Oh, what I was to say is, I think because of where the battlefield is and also where the monster tent is, whichever place we are, if you've gone back through the gate with, so for example, at E4 when you went back through with the effect that you had, we could hear the chaos. Obviously, we don't get to see it, so we could hear the fighting as you were coming back through the gate. So yeah, we sometimes get to hear stuff going on.
Yeah, no, that was something else. It was the fact that we came back through that gate, because there was a skirmish before that as well, and it was quite busy around the Central Gate before that, because I think there was like issues coming out of that one. But by the time we came out of that skirmish, and like Robin and I were like the third or fourth people to come home. Because even though we were behind, we like shot forward, didn't we? Because we were just like, we just kept running.
We just kept running.
No, yeah, because we were already running, and there was I know why. It's because the person leading the skirmish had gone down, and there was a few people like going, should we try and save him? Should we try and not save him? Blah, blah, blah. And there was like debates going on, but there was a few of us that were like, this is let's go, So we were like one of the first people through.
Do you know what I found out after the fact as well was that so basically to the people in Dawn who are in the house that Godric is now in, they'd come up with a plan on what to do if Godric and Aranel were actually separated, one of them was there with a rappel ready, so that if, for example, Godric was taken back, they could repel Aranel through the Sentinel Gate because they knew that we would end up both dying to save each other. And I was like, if you had done that, Aranel would have killed you the moment you came through the gate. I just finding out that they had this plan going like, no, we need to both go because we need to bring at least one of them back.
Yeah, I mean that's one request I would make of a. Oh, that's actually a question for you. Like, so because like you're saying, you like we leave you, like in wherever part of the world you are as we jump through the gate. But yeah, what happens? So obviously sometimes players get left behind. So is that quite a juicy bit? Do you get a bit of role play out of that when like players are left behind and you have to like kill them and eat them and things like that, or is it usually just oh yeah, you're gone and that's it?
So it'll very much depend on who we're playing. So obviously as the Druge, one of the things we will tend to do as players are still on the field and leaving the field is play up the role play there on sort of, oh, you've left friends behind. The Jotun are obviously a lot more honourable. So you might find sometimes the Jotun will even offer to let you come and collect them.
Yeah.
But then as soon as you guys have stepped through the Sentinel Gate and are sort of in that sort of, there's that middle bit that's sort of out of character before you go back into character. Once you kind of get out of character, generally it's just a case of the refs sort of rounding them up and generally walking them back to God.
Yeah. So you want to have your. There's one thing I would request of the skirmish team. If I'm going to die on a skirmish, I want it to be very dramatic and worthy of a story. Not just me tripping up and then going, oh damn it, I'm Venom. No one knows. Okay.
So I think that one of the things you were saying about the nighttime skirmishes, obviously if you fall on the field in a night skirmish, you're much less likely to get picked back up on the way back.
Yeah.
So that probably won't be as cool and dramatic.
No.
But yeah, there are a lot of the skirmish crew that if you go down behind the lines in the daytime in the light we can see you, then yeah, particularly if we're Druge, then we'll definitely play it up.
Yeah. It's nasty. Well, I mean, It's the thing with Empire is because like we were talking about this earlier with the different LARPs, because Anvil is like a safe zone. There is combat that can happen in Anvil, but your character's pretty much immortal if you don't go through that gate. Pretty much, if you decide not to interact with anything. So, but because of that, sometimes you're like, oh, I want to do this, and this. Do I want to go skirmish? Nah, I don't really want to risk death. So sometimes you're like, I'll like weigh up what skirmishes I'm going to do. But I definitely want to. I want to try and do like one skirmish every event. It won't be on Friday and it won't be at nighttime.
One during the day with all of dawn.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah. You kind of pick and choose. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back out there because we're not far away now till E1. We're only
it's just
4
a few
weeks.
weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, a few weeks. Yeah. So there'll be dark skirmishes then. Like you said, I think E4 is probably the worst one for dark skirmishes, but yeah, E1 I imagine can be a little bit dark and miserable as well sometimes with the skirmishes.
I think the bonus with E1 is the woods tend to not be quite as overgrown because we're still coming out of winter, so the brambles haven't had chance to pop up.
Yeah.
By the time you hit the summer events, the woods are horrendous. Yeah.
No, I'm looking forward to it. Right, folks, we're at time. Chira, thank you very much for coming on. You've been very, very insightful. It's I'm actually I'm surprised actually how much I'm like jealous of the skirmish crew now. I'm being like,
I know.
Yeah, I'm like, it sounds like a great fight. Just being like, going, oh yeah, I'm gonna put my Valorn stuff on now. I'm gonna put my Druge character on. It sounds awesome. Yeah, thank you for coming on and imparting your knowledge.
It's all right. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. Right, folks, we'll say goodbye to the podcast. Bye everyone. Thank you very much for stopping by. If you enjoyed this show, make sure you give us a thumbs up. Make sure you leave us a comment down below as well. Hit subscribe, ring the bell. We have some other episodes covering Empire LARP and LARP in general. Until the next time, though, we love you and stay safe.